Welcome to China's Living Legends.
欢迎来到我的频道。
Greetings, everyone. We are now in the heart of China's Spring Festival holiday, a time for reunion and renewal. Today, we delve into a royal ritual from the Eastern Han Dynasty that might just surprise you.
Imagine a stage performance. But there are no celebrities, no pop stars, and no fireworks.
Okay.
Instead, picture 120 preteen boys standing in formation, screaming in unison. And they aren't just making noise, they are trying to physically change the weather.
120 boys.
Standing in front of them is a man draped in a real bearskin, wearing a golden mask with 4 eyes, holding a spear. This wasn't entertainment, it was survival.
Yeah, it is. Wow. That is quite the image to start with. It sounds like something from a high-budget fantasy movie, not a holiday celebration.
It does, doesn't it?
It feels visceral. I mean, you can almost smell the torch smoke and the sweat just hearing that.
And that was the reality of the Great Nuo Rite, or Da Nuo Rite. On the surface, it looks a lot like a parade. But functionally, it acted like a power plant.
A power plant. That's a very industrial metaphor for an ancient ritual.
It's really the only way to describe the mechanics of it. The goal wasn't just to celebrate the season or have a good time.
Right.
The goal was to physically push winter out the door and, pull spring in. It was an engineering feat, but instead of electricity, they believed they were manipulating cosmic energy.
And I think that brings us to the central paradox of this whole deep dive. Because today, we think of the Spring Festival as a time of peace, dumplings, red envelopes. It's cozy.
Exactly. It's a family holiday.
But this original ritual, it involved weapons, exorcism, and what sounds like military-grade coordination.
Right. So we have to ask the question, why does a celebration of peace look so much like a preparation for war?
Where do we even start with that?
To understand it, we have to look at the batteries that were powering this whole machine.
The batteries being the children.
Yep.
Okay, let's look at the cast list here. The core of this Eastern Han ritual was a chorus of 120 children.
Specifically, 120 boys.
And the demographic was so specific, they all had to be between the ages of 10 and 12. Now, usually when we see numbers like that in history, our eyes kind of glaze over.
Oh, 100 people, 1,000 people. It just means a lot.
Exactly, a lot. But in the Han Dynasty, nothing was random. We have to pause here because this is where the deep dive really comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Why 120 boys?
It's such a specific number.
Why not 100? Why not 1,000 to make it look even more impressive?
You would think more is better, right? But in the Han cosmology, you don't do things just to look impressive. You do them to align with the mathematical structure of the universe.
Okay, you can't just say that. You have to break that down.
Okay, so the number 120 is a mathematical lock and key for the calendar.
A lock and key.
Think about it. You have the 12 months in a year, you have the 10 heavenly stems, you have the 12 earthly branches. These are like the fundamental gears of the Chinese zodiac and their entire timekeeping system.
Right, the system that governs everything.
And 120 is the devastatingly precise common multiple that aligns all of those cycles. It brings them into resonance.
So this isn't just a crowd, it's a calculator made of people.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's a biological computer. If you use 119 boys, the circuit doesn't close. The math is wrong.
And if you use 121...
You overload the ritual. You create static. They were trying to mirror the mathematical structure of the cosmos using human biology.
It's almost like they were trying to hack the simulation code of the seasons.
That is exactly what they were doing. And to hack the code, you need the purest source code you can find.
And that brings us back to the biology of these boys.
Exactly. This is where we have to put on our ancient metaphysicist hats. We need to break down the battery logic of this whole thing. It all comes down to yin and yang.
The fundamental duality. But I feel like we use those terms so loosely now. Oh, my living room has good yin and yang. What did it actually mean to them in a physical sense?
Right, it's not just about interior design. In the ancient worldview, everything is categorized. Men belong to yang, women belong to yin.
Light and dark, active and passive.
Exactly. Each gender carries that specific vital energy, or qi. Now, within that logic, if your goal is to build a generator of pure yang energy to fight the cold, dark yin of winter, who is your best fuel source?
I'm guessing it's not an adult man who's been worn down by life, by stress, by work.
Precisely. It's the unblemished young boy. The ancients had this concept of primal yang.
Primal yang, that sounds incredibly intense.
It is. It's the idea of unspent, undiminished energy. Because these boys haven't reached sexual maturity, they believed their essence hadn't been leaked or diminished yet. It's concentrated. It's pure.
So it's a potential energy argument.
It is. If you compare it to modern battery storage, an adult man is like a battery that's been used, maybe recharged a few times. It holds a steady but ultimately lower charge. A 10-year-old boy, that's a fresh industrial-grade lithium battery right out of the package at 100% capacity.
You know, this actually connects so many dots. It explains so many cultural oddities we see pop up in history and even in fiction. I mean, we've all heard of the concept of boys' virgin martial arts, right?
Right, in kung fu movies and stories.
The idea there is that to maintain your peak martial power, your peak strength, you have to maintain that unspent state. You can't let the energy dissipate.
And it gets even more visceral than that. I mean, historically, there was a widespread medical belief in the potency of boys' urine.
Oh, don't remind me. But yes, the idea was that consuming it could replenish the yang energy in a sicker or elderly person. It sounds bizarre to us.
It sounds completely bizarre, but the internal logic is consistent. If the boy is a vessel of pure yang, then everything produced by that vessel is seen as potent as carrying that charge.
It even shows up so clearly in literature. Think about Journey to the West.
One of the absolute classics.
We always talk about the demons wanting to eat Tang Song the monk. And usually we just think, oh, demons eat people. That's just what monsters do.
It's their job description.
But it was more specific than that. They didn't just want a meal. They wanted immortality. They wanted his power.
Precisely. Tang Song wasn't just a holy man. The story explicitly tells us he had maintained his pristine state, his virginity, across 10 lifetimes of spiritual cultivation.
10 lifetimes. Can you imagine?
He was a walking nuclear reactor of primal yang, the ultimate battery.
And the demons in this framework are what?
They are inherently yin entities. They are of the dark, the cold, the chaotic. They crave that yang for balance. It's not about hunger in the normal sense. It's energy cultivation. They want to steal his battery charge to stabilize their own existence and achieve a higher state.
So, bringing it all the way back to our ritual. If demons want to eat the boys to get that energy, the emperor wants to use the boys' energy to direct it.
Exactly. This is the climate control mechanism.
I have to push back a little on this, though. Because weather is weather. It's high-pressure systems and jet streams and cold fronts. Did they genuinely believe that 120 kids shouting could change the temperature? Or was this just, deeply symbolic?
You have to step out of the modern materialist mindset for a moment. In their worldview, winter is peak yin. It's cold, it's dark, it's slow. Spring is the rising yang. Now, normally, the great machine of the cosmos handles this transition on its own.
But sometimes it doesn't.
What if it gets stuck? What if the engine stalls on a particularly cold morning?
Okay, I like that analogy.
If heaven is low on yang, you get endless winter, or maybe floods. Too much yin. If there's too much yang too early, you get a devastating drought.
So the ritual was a human intervention. It was a thermostat adjustment.
It was a human responsibility to maintain the balance. So when you have 120 boys, perfectly aligned with the cosmic calendar, shouting in unison.
You're creating a massive transfusion of yang energy.
Directed straight at the cosmos, they are shouting to jumpstart the engine of spring. They are giving heaven the jolt it needs to get moving again.
It's just fascinating to think of a choir as a utility. Like an official saying, we need more power for the grid, turn up the volume on the 10-year-olds.
It's brutally efficient engineering, if you accept the premises of the physics. But a battery, no matter how powerful, needs a conductor. It needs something to direct that flow of energy.
And that, I assume, brings us to the star performer. The lead singer, if you will.
Though I seriously doubt he was singing a pop ballad.
No, definitely not. Let's really paint the picture for everyone because this is such a visually striking figure. We're talking about the Fang Shangxi.
The ritual leader, or more accurately, the exorcist.
The costume details are incredibly specific. First, he's draped in a real bearskin.
Not a faux fur rug from a department store, a literal, actual bear.
Then, there's the mask. It's made of gold, and it has 4 eyes.
Which is just fundamentally terrifying. 2 eyes is normal, 4 is otherworldly.
And his clothes underneath, he's wearing a red upper garment, red being the color of yang, of fire, of course, and a white lower garment. And he's armed. He's not just there to look scary. He's carrying a spear and a shield.
And we really need to pause on that bearskin. Because to a modern ear, this just sounds chaotic, almost savage. Let's dress up like a wild animal. But you have to understand, in the Eastern Han, the bear wasn't chosen for its savagery. It was chosen for its competence.
Its competence in what? Mauling thing?
Its competence in navigating the winter. Think about what a bear actually does. It hibernates. It enters a state of suspended animation. It conquers the cold and the darkness by becoming one with it.
It goes into the underworld, the cave, for months.
And it comes back out alive in spring.
So the bear is the only creature that has a proven return ticket from the land of the dead, from the deepest yin.
Precisely. So by wearing the skin, the Feng Jiangxi is co-opting that biological superpower. He is making a statement to all the demons and malevolent forces. He's saying, I know the darkness better than you do. I can navigate this transition from yin back to yang because I have the bear's power.
It's so functional. It's not fashion. It's a spiritual hazmat suit for entering the underworld.
That's a great way to put it. And this is where we see that this wasn't just a ceremonial role where you wave a wand and look mysterious. This was a functional government position.
He had a job description.
Yes, literally. The Rites of Zhu, which is one of the foundational Confucian texts, lists this as a job. It's not just guy who dances at the New Year. He had specific year-round duties.
Okay, what kind of duties were we talking about?
Well, during this great Nuo Rite, his main job is to lead the crowd of boys into the palace rooms to physically search for ghosts. He is clearing the space.
Like a spiritual SWAT team clearing a building.
Exactly. Go, 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 go. But he also had crucial funerary duties. When a prominent official or royal died, the Feng Jiangxi would walk before the coffin in the procession.
Why?
His job was to clear the path, to scare away any spirits or demons that might try to hijack the soul on its way to the afterlife or even try to inhabit the body.
That is a heavy responsibility.
And it didn't end there. At the burial itself, he would take that spear and thrust it violently into the four corners of the open grave before the coffin was lowered.
What was that for?
Securing the perimeter. He was building a spiritual fence, warding the space to keep the occupants safe in their tomb and to keep the demons out for good.
You mentioned demons and spirits, but the actual ritual chants from this time were very specific about what or who they were fighting.
They explicitly named the creatures they were targeting. These were vicious, cruel, inauspicious entities with names.
So it wasn't just a general sense of bad vibes or negative energy?
No, not at all. And this is where the modern analyst in me gets really interested. Because in the ancient mind, these specific named creatures were the direct cause of epidemics.
Right. They didn't have germ theory. They couldn't see a virus under a microscope.
They didn't know what a virus or bacteria was, but they absolutely knew that something invisible was moving through the population and killing people. They knew that misfortune and sickness could spread like a shadow.
So they personified those threats. They gave the plague a name and a face.
Exactly. They named it, they visualized it as one of these demons. So when the Feng Jiangxi is dancing with his spear and the boys are screaming,
He is performing public health.
he is performing disease control. This is the ancient world's CDC, disguised as theater. In a pre-scientific world, how do you fight an invisible enemy like a plague? You have to use the loudest, brightest, most aggressive spiritual weapon you have. You try to literally scare the virus away.
Okay, hold on. I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Yeah.
We're talking about a guy in a bear suit shaking a spear at invisible air. You're calling it disease control, but
Yeah.
isn't that giving them a little too much credit? At the end of the day, shouting at a virus doesn't actually kill the virus. It feels like magical thinking.
Mechanically, you're right. If you put a petri dish in front of a screaming boy, the bacteria doesn't just die of fright. But you're thinking like a 21st century scientist. You have to think like a Han Dynasty socio-political engineer.
Okay, put me in their shoes. I'm a Han official. People are dying of the plague. I don't have antibiotics. What does this ritual actually do for me on a practical level?
First and foremost, it manages panic. It gives people a sense of agency. But more than that, the Great Nuo wasn't just magic. It was a sanitation sweep. Remember the part about searching the rooms?
The spiritual search and destroy mission.
Right. They physically went into every room of the palace, and later this spread to common households with torches. Fire is a disinfectant. It purifies. The smoke acts as a fumigant. By chasing ghosts, they were also likely clearing out stagnant air, driving out pests, maybe even rats that carried disease.
So the ghosts might have been a metaphor, but the rats were very real.
Exactly. And the psychological impacts cannot be overstated. Imagine you're a regular person in the Han Dynasty capital. You're terrified of the winter sickness. Then you see the emperor's own master exorcist, backed by 120 pure energy boys, sweeping the city with fire and noise.
You'd feel safer. You'd feel like someone was in charge.
Your stress levels would go down. And we know today that lower stress can actually lead to a better functioning immune system. So in a roundabout way, it might have had a real medical benefit.
That is a powerful way to look at it. It changes the whole feeling of the event. It's not just a Happy New Year party. It's a desperate plea. Please, let us survive another year without the plague.
Exactly. It's proactive community defense. And it all relies on a very specific type of logic that anthropologists have a name for. It's called sympathetic magic.
Let's unpack that term. Sympathetic magic. I've heard it before, but what's the core principle?
The core idea is simple. Like produces like.
Can you give us an easy example?
Sure. A classic one is a rain dance. If you want rain to fall from the sky, you might pour water on the ground or mimic the sound of thunder with drums. You imitate the result you want to cause in the universe.
So for the great Nuo Rite.
You want a massive surge of cosmic energy. You want warmth, light, life, the yang of spring. So what do? You create a massive surge of human energy. You get loud, you get bright, you get active.
You create the heat and the noise that you want the universe to mirror back to you.
Precisely. You are trying to resonate with the frequency of the coming season. If humanity is loud and bright and full of yang, the logic is that heaven will look down and say, I see what you're doing, I'll match that energy.
It's that idea of harmony between heaven and humanity.
Yes, but harmony often sounds so passive to us, like sitting quietly in a garden. This was aggressive harmony. This was grabbing the universe by the lapels and shouting, it's time for spring.
Forcing the issue.
Exactly. And it's not unique to China. This kind of logic appears in early cultures all over the world. It seems to be a default setting for the human brain when trying to exert some control over an uncontrollable environment.
Now, organizing something this complex, 120 kids, specific costumes, the timing, the choreography, that takes an incredible amount of work. And usually when we think of the people organizing things in ancient China, we think of Confucian scholars.
You do.
But we usually picture them as philosophers, old men with long beards sitting around discussing benevolence and filial piety, not event planners for an exorcism.
And that's the common misconception. We view Confucianism through a very modern philosophical lens. We cherry-pick the parts about ethics and morality, but originally, it was highly, highly technical.
Technical in what way?
Think about their official title, Officials of Rites. These weren't just party planners or ethicists. They were engineers of ceremony. They had binders full of specifications.
So they believed that if you got the ritual wrong,
the magic wouldn't work. If the angle of your bow was off by a few degrees, or the drums were played at the wrong tempo, or you used the wrong color silk,
the circuit wouldn't close.
Exactly. The cosmos wouldn't respond correctly, and the stakes were incredibly high.
Yeah.
If you mess up a parade today, people complain about it on Twitter. If you messed up the Great Nuo in the Han Dynasty and a flood happened 2 months later, that was your fault. You failed to stabilize the cosmic grid.
Wow. So these officials had to master exact head counts, costume specs, musical sequences. There's a famous quote about this, isn't there? Something like, one's whole life cannot exhaust its learning. A single lifetime cannot fully master its rituals.
That sounds absolutely exhausting, but it shows you the level of precision and the sheer volume of data they were expected to master. It was an immense body of technical knowledge, like being a physicist and a stage manager and a priest all at once.
So what happened? Why do we mostly think of them just as philosophers now?
Over the centuries, the intellectual class shifted its focus. They gradually moved away from being these technical ritual specialists and became more focused on being political officials.
More about policy and governance, less about choreography for ghosts.
Exactly. They were more interested in tax policy than the correct number of feathers on a ceremonial headdress. And so the deep technical knowledge of the rituals was left to a tiny, specialized group of experts. It became niche.
And that would explain why, over centuries, some of the details were lost or changed. Because the people running the government weren't the ones sweating the details of the bearskin anymore.
They weren't. They just knew it had to be done.
Speaking of things changing over centuries, let's look at how this ritual evolved. Because we started with this absolutely terrifying high-stakes exorcism in the Han Dynasty. But eventually, it turns into something that looks a lot more like a party. A gala.
It's a fascinating transition from fear to fun. But let's look at the grand finale of the Han ritual first, because it's a key piece of the puzzle.
The disposal phase.
Right. So after all the shouting and the dancing and the searching of rooms, you have the imperial guards. and they are all carrying torches.
Fire is always a central element.
Always. They carry these torches in a procession to the banks of the Luo River, and on command, they throw them into the water.
What's the symbolism there? It seems counterintuitive. Fire and water.
It's a final, powerful cleansing. By throwing the torches, which represent all the bad stuff they've collected, into the water, they are symbolically drowning the late winter chill. They're drowning the calamities and the demons they've just exorcised from the palace.
It's like flushing them away.
Literally. The river flows out to the sea, and the idea is that all these bad things are now removed from the human world entirely. They are washed out to the great ocean where they can't hurt anyone anymore.
That image of the torches hitting the water and extinguishing, it's so final. But obviously history didn't stop there. The Han Dynasty fell. China went through centuries of chaos and civil war. Did a huge state ritual like this even survive?
It did, but it changed, and this is where the story gets really interesting. During those periods of disunity, the three kingdoms and northern and southern dynasties, the central government wasn't strong enough to keep a monopoly on it.
So the Great Nuo started to leak out of the palace. It went open source.
In a way, yes. It moved from being an exclusive imperial right to being part of the folk culture. Villagers started doing their own smaller versions to protect their own homes. So when the Tang Dynasty finally reunited China centuries later, they brought the ritual back to the court, but the vibe had completely shifted.
How so?
The Tang Dynasty was arguably the peak of Chinese civilization. They were cosmopolitan, they were powerful, they were confident. They were the undisputed superpower of the world.
So they didn't feel the need to scream at nature anymore.
They didn't have that same level of existential dread. They were secure enough to turn the war into a parade. In the Han, the focus was heavy on the fear of ghosts. By the Tang, people weren't quite so terrified of the dark. They were more interested in the spectacle. It became a performance.
And we have descriptions of this, right, for the poet Wang Jian and his palace poems.
Yes, and he describes the scene so vividly. He talks about the palace courtyards being lit bright as day with lanterns and fires. He mentions expensive agar-wood fires burning and music playing all night long.
When I read that description, courtyards lit bright as day, music playing all night. It sounds exactly like how we celebrate the modern Lunar New Year.
It really does, doesn't it?
We call it Shosui, the tradition of staying up late to welcome the new year. We leave all the lights on, we make noise with firecrackers or by watching TV.
The intent has softened, but the mechanism is identical. We use light to scare away the darkness and whatever might be lurking in it. We use noise to fill the silence of that transitional moment. Whether it's a bearskin dancer or a TV gala host, the function is to occupy that liminal space between the old year and the new, with human energy and presence.
And by the time we get to the Song Dynasty, a few hundred years later, this Spring Festival Gala archetype is pretty much fully formed.
It is. And what's great is we actually have visual evidence from the song. Yeah. There's a famous painting called The Scroll of the Great Nuo Rite, and it shows a scene that is much more theatrical, much more like a parade or a variety show than the intense military exorcism we started with in the Han.
And this brings us to a really interesting artifact. It involves one of China's most, well, let's just say, interactive emperors.
Emperor Qianlong of the Qing Dynasty, a man of many opinions.
He really couldn't leave a blank space alone, could he?
No. He had a compulsion. If Emperor Qianlong saw a masterpiece painting, he felt an undeniable urge to write on it, to add his seal, to make it his.
We've called him the original reply guy, or maybe the first bullet screen commenter, like on video streaming sites where comments from viewers fly across the screen. That was him, but with permanent ink on priceless ancient art.
It's a perfect analogy. So he commissioned a copy of that Song Dynasty scroll we just mentioned. And true to form, he couldn't just hang it up. He wrote a long poem directly on the artwork.
This is the song of the Great Nuo.
It is. And it's written in a very specific, very aggressive style called Beiliang style.
Okay, what does that mean? I'm not familiar with that one.
Beiliang style is basically the heavy metal of Chinese poetry.
Heavy metal?
Think about it. Most poetry has a rhythm, a lilt, A, B, A, B, rhyme schemes, it breathes, it has a melody. Beiliang style is A, 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 A. Every single line hammers the exact same rhyme sound over and over. Clang, clang, clang.
It's relentless. It's designed to be percussive.
Exactly. Emperor Qianlong chose this style because he wasn't writing a quiet reflection. He was writing a marching song. He wanted the poem itself to sound like the drums of the Nuo ritual. He was trying to trap the raw energy of the exorcism inside the structure of the text.
And the content of the poem, what does he describe?
It's heroic. It's epic. He describes the sun god driving his chariot across the sky. He describes the pestilence being driven away. He explicitly mentions the four-eyed mask, the bearskin, the 100 youths, the drums, the torches at the river.
It sounds like a summary of the ancient Han ritual.
Yeah.
The line about frost-cold masks versus yellow fire is so vivid.
It is epic. He's channeling that original terrifying energy, but here's the twist. This is the cliffhanger.
Lay it on me.
In the 1980s, modern art historians and scholars were looking at this. They looked at the beautiful painting Qianlong commissioned, and then they read the poem that he wrote on the painting, and they noticed a massive problem. What Qianlong describes in this poem does not match what is actually painted in the scroll he was looking at.
Wait, what? He's writing a caption for a picture, but the caption doesn't match the picture.
Exactly. He describes the ancient, terrifying Han ritual, the bearskin, the specific weapons, the raw exorcism. But the Song Dynasty painting, which was right in front of him, depicts the later, more theatrical, more festive Gala version of the ritual. The performers look more like actors and acrobats.
So he was describing the idea of the ritual or the history of the ritual from ancient texts, rather than what was literally in front of his eyes.
Precisely. It highlights this fascinating disconnect that happens with tradition. There is the memory of the ritual preserved in old respected texts and poems, and then there's the visual reality of how it was actually performed hundreds of years later. Qianlong was seeing the past even while looking at a painting of his more recent present.
That is such a human thing to do, isn't it? We see what we expect to see, or what we've read we should see. It reminds us that tradition isn't some static thing passed down perfectly. It's a layer cake of memories, interpretations, and changes.
It is. And it leaves us with a bit of a scholarly detective story. What exactly was the difference? What was in that painting that he chose to ignore in his heroic poem? But I think that's a deep dive for another day.
Indeed. So let's just try and recap this incredible journey. We started with 120 boys acting as a human battery.
A biological computer creating a yang surge to fix the climate.
We met the bearskin exorcist, this amazing figure fighting invisible viruses with his spear.
The original public health officer.
And we watched this terrifying, necessary ritual slowly evolve, century by century, into a lantern-lit party that looks suspiciously like today's televised spring festival galas.
It's a straight line. The methods changed, the costumes changed, the fear level definitely changed. But the fundamental human need didn't. We need to feel like we have some control over the passing of time. We need to feel like we can push the bad luck away and pull the good luck in.
Which leads us to a provocative thought to leave you with today.
Right. If the ancients believed their gala actually caused spring to arrive, that without the noise and the boys and the bear, winter would just stay forever, do we still carry a little piece of that magical thinking with us today?
When we watch the ball drop on New Year's Eve, or when we light a firework, is it just for fun?
Are we just celebrating time passing? Or deep down in that primitive part of our brain, are we secretly trying to push the bad luck of the old year off a cliff? Are we still trying to give the world a push to start the engine all over again?
Next time you light a sparkler or hear a firecracker, ask yourself, who or what are you trying to scare away?
Something to think about.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you in the next one.
Happy Spring Festival.
If you found this discussion useful, maybe learned something new, definitely hit that subscribe button. We do these deep dives regularly, exploring valuable ideas.
We appreciate you tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.